Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Our guest today, Nadig. It's really good to meet you. I'm so happy to have you on. And can you tell us, first of all, where you're calling in from and what you do for a living with Liquid Donate?
Hi, Matt. Nice to have you. Nice to talk to you. I live in San Francisco, and currently I'm in Austin, visiting a friend of mine who is doing a part of an accelerator program. And I'm happy to tell you a little more about Liquid Donate. At Liquid Donate, we make it easy for retailers and businesses to donate anything that they cannot sell to local nonprofits. And in the process, we save them a ton of money. Their brand value increases because they're supporting local communities, and at the same time they get donation receipts which they can use for like tax deduction purposes.
That's awesome. And so tell me a little bit more about your background, I suppose. What did you kind of notice out there in the market with typical ways that people would be donating things, whether they're retailers or small businesses or whatever it is? What kind of issue did you notice there that you were trying to solve or make better with this brand?
So I'll start with my background a little bit and how I got into working with Liquid Donate. So before Liquid Donate, me and my co-founder Diz, who is the CEO of the company and I'm the CTO of the company, we worked at Postmates together. And Postmates being a food delivery app, we had a social impact and tech for good product that the two of us built at Postmates, which allowed restaurants to donate their leftover food to like local food banks and nonprofits at the end of their business day. Because food waste is a huge problem that any food producer faces, and especially with perishables, it's very hard for them to do anything with it because customers always like want fresh food made at the beginning of the day, and they wouldn't want something that is, and restaurants don't want to sell something that is stale. So at the push of a button, these restaurants would be able to like send all their leftovers to a local food bank because a courier would just show up, take things and move it away. So this Liquid Donate is like an extension of whatever we did at Postmates. It's just that we're not focused on primarily on restaurants, but we're focused on retail. Retailers have a very similar problem as well, where they frequently end up with items that they cannot sell for a variety of reasons. The most common ones are like excess inventory. They order things in bulk and they can't sell it. Or maybe items go out of fashion, or the styles change and they don't want to sell something that is outdated on their e-commerce website. And the third most common reason is like, say, returns. Like anytime somebody shops online with free returns and with generous return policies, like people generally order more than what they need with the hopes of trying out multiple t-shirts and maybe returning the ones that they don't like. Every time these things are being returned to retailers, it's a huge operating cost for them. It's a huge burden on them. And most often these returns go into landfill. And that's the myth about online shopping that is not very commonly known, but that's just the world that we live in today. And with Liquid Donate, me and my co-founder are trying to change the environment of the retail waste problem by having those returns go directly to nonprofits.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that. And so how do you kind of like come up and like start a conversation with a retailer to say like, hey, like, I don't know how you're doing it now. This is a better way to deal with your waste issue. What is your general, I guess, kind of strategy? Are you doing a lot of like cold outreaching? Do people reach directly out to you? I mean, I'm sure the charities and food banks and things that you work with, I'm sure they're happy to take, all the help they can get, I'm sure. But yeah, how do you kind of approach those conversations initially to kind of, pitch that like, this could be a better way that could also, save you money in the long run as well?
Yeah, for sure. So what we're doing is like something very novel. I don't think there's anyone who's looking at this whole retail waste problem the way we're looking at it. Mm-hmm. So we're really like the first company to think about building nonprofits and donations into our business model. So when we talk to retailers and when we ask them if they have considered donation as a disposition option for anything that they cannot sell, the most common reaction is like surprise, because they never thought that donating an item would actually save them money, because they're always like trying to look at liquidation options, which have their own problems, which are very inefficient and doesn't really avoid items from going into landfills. So that's usually surprised when we actually tell retailers that donation is a disposition option that'll save you money with tax deductions and also the operational cost savings. So, I mean, in terms of how we ask them to convince them to start working with us and like prove it to them that they will save money is by showing it with the numbers. Most retailers are very motivated with financial cost savings, and we have case studies to prove that when donation is used, they save a lot of money. I mean, it's almost like they don't have to see the item ever again when these returns get sent directly to nonprofits. And when they don't have to see the item again, they're saving on transportation, they're saving on labor costs like landfill costs, all of that is avoided when the item goes directly from the customer to the nonprofit. So a lot of the retailers that we currently work with are mostly outbound sales that we do. And we reach out to them and we tell them we have a solution for your excess inventory or your returns problem, and proving it to them with a demo or like a pilot, which with a small subset of their inventory is how we convince them that this is a model that is going to help them.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And I mean, I think the product market fit is clear. This is a very novel idea that is solving a monumental problem, I'm sure, which is waste in, in retail spaces. And so I guess I'm curious, like, where's the revenue really coming from with this brand? Do you charge a fee with the retailers to facilitate this service and then like kind of pass the savings off through their charitable giving tax breaks through kind of that way to kind of say, like, well, if you sold it, you would make this much, you could save this much on taxes, and then we charge the fee. It equates to the same. And you get the good brand recognition through, being a donative partner, basically. Or are you working with nonprofits? Are they contracting you out? I'm just curious where the revenue streams are.
The revenue stream for us comes from the retailers. So the more retailers donate with us, the more they pay us to use our platform. Just to elaborate a little more on what their current expenses are, like when a customer returns an item back to the retailer, on an average, the retailer is spending 2/3 the cost of the item on the reverse logistics.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So like a $100 item, the customer gets a $100 refund, and the retailer has to spend at least on an average, around $66 to get it back from the customer and pay the people at the warehouse, like unwrap it, figure out if it's in a usable condition, disposable, recycle, whatever. All of that takes time and money and effort. There's storage costs. And when we send the item directly from the customer to the nonprofit, they only have to just pay for the shipping. And the shipping will probably be like worst case scenario. It'll be like, say, I don't know, $20 to ship it from point A to point B. And then there's none of the other labor costs, the transportation, packaging costs that I mentioned earlier. So when we save retailers money on handling these returns, they stand to get a lot of brand value because they're able to support their local communities. And just by like donating on our platform, they have to pay us. And that's how we make money from retailers. The nonprofits get everything for free. And that is something that me and my co-founder are very adamant about, because my co-founder, she's worked extensively with nonprofits in the past, and we understand that there's a huge demand for in-kind donations across all nonprofits in the country. So they're always looking for donations and free stuff, and so we want to keep it free for them. There are some large donations like furnitures that we have donated from retailers to nonprofits, and maybe in those scenarios we've asked the nonprofits to pay for like the logistics of curing the item, like maybe just say that the delivery charges of moving it from a warehouse to one of their clients' house. But otherwise, the item itself is donated and it's free of charge for the nonprofits.
That's fascinating. And so basically take this situation where you're paying essentially 2/3 of each unit of product that you're trying to resell or basically get rid of as a retailer. And basically you're coming in and saying what you can make with that 1/3 return that you're getting on those, you would save more with the tax savings, and you get the added value of the added brand value by, donating these things rather than selling them back. That's basically like a synopsis of the business model. Do you think I'm correct in that?
That is absolutely correct. Like,
that's fascinating. That's very creative. I love that, actually.
Yeah. I mean, initially when me and my co-founder were like piloting our product and trying to prove the model, we worked with Restoration Hardware. Are you familiar with the brand? They're a high-end furniture brand.
What is it called?
Restoration Hardware.
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, they're a high-end furniture brand, really fancy furniture. I mean, someday maybe even I plan on having one of their furniture in my apartment. So they had the same problem with returns and things piling up in their warehouses. So we piloted donating Restoration Hardware couches to nonprofits. So that was a very beautiful story, because there's this couch which is very high end and very fancy, and we got that delivered to somebody who was recently rehoused and was previously like suffering like from homelessness. So that was a nice story, and that is something that most brands on our platform can get access to, which is the storytelling piece about how they support local communities. And there have been like plenty of studies about how brands that are conscious about supporting local communities, brands that are conscious about being sustainable, generally increase their brand value and attract more consumers and shoppers to shop at their websites.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. What a great case study for anybody that you might be, pitching this service to, or anybody who maybe is new to working on the platform, to just be able to see that. That's an incredible story. And so I suppose, something as a novel idea like this, I mean, this is clearly filling a massive gap out there in the market right now. How do you kind of go about, protecting your IP from, people maybe like other like competitors maybe popping up or trying to do the same idea? Have you grappled with that since your launch? I can imagine if people come across this, this, they might think, wow, this is a genius idea. Why don't I do this? How do you kind of grapple with those things and make sure you're diligent on that side of things as well?
Making sure that we are the primary ones to offer the solution for retailers. It's mostly just a land grab kind of a situation that any of the other startups that came up with a novel idea had to face in their journey. Like let's take for example, say Amazon with AWS. Like they're the largest provider of web services and infrastructure. Like although there is like other companies doing the same thing, but since they were the ones to establish themselves in the space of web services, they have the largest market share. So we are looking at this in the same way, like making it very easy for retailers to get onboarded to our platform and start getting the benefits of donations and offering an experience that makes it very easy for them to continue working with us. So if there are copycats in the future, the way we see it is that's just more social impact in the world, and I don't think it really hurts to have more social impact in the world. So it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing to have competitors trying to good and like similar to us. But right now we're focused on just making our software accessible to more retailers and really getting embedded into their operations processes so that it's harder for them to like switch, even if there are others providing the same service in the future.
That's amazing. And I think that's true for such a novel idea like this. So like anything that comes along, I think raises the awareness that this is an option and how viable it actually is can probably help anybody that comes along who's also operating in this space. So I think that's a good and healthy perspective on that. So I appreciate you sharing that. But I suppose, if we were to speak maybe like a year from now, do you see yourself maybe getting into other types of industries, whether it's like maybe agriculture waste or other things like that? Do you have any plans to expand into other industries outside of retail in the future?
Yes, but I don't know how that looks. I think immediate future, we want to be able to think about like upcycling consumer products as well. I mean, just to give you some numbers about how big this whole supply and demand space is for the problem that we are trying to solve, retailers have at least $861 billion worth of returned just lying in warehouses that they're not able to do anything with. In terms of excess inventory, it's like $471 billion worth of excess inventory just all over on average across all warehouses in the US. But on the nonprofit side, it's $1 trillion demand for in-kind donations. So it's $1 trillion in-kind demand for in-kind donations. So we, at the heart of it, our problem is just like matching all the supply with all this demand. I think we have our work carved out. I mean, just to achieve this, we're using tech initially. But however, the next few years, I think we'll be focused on upcycling and recycling items as well. Let's say, for example, there's this apparel company that is not able to sell t-shirts because these t-shirts have a defect on them and they're not wearable. And I don't know, they got damaged in transportation or something, and they're now left with a pallet full of t-shirts that can't be sold. It can't be donated either because we don't want to give things to nonprofits that can't be used by anyone. In that scenario, we could potentially take all those t-shirts and give it to a textile upcycler who would maybe shred it and make insulation for homes and buildings. There's plenty of opportunity there to like upcycle things even when they can't be used. Like I can talk about like glass, I can talk about like clothes, I can talk about rubber, a lot of so there's plenty of wood. Like all of these materials can be like broken down into their basic components and made into something else. And there are circularity partners that we are currently working with, but I don't think we're at the tip of the iceberg in terms of onboarding circularity partners onto our platform. So that's where I see the next few years of where our focus will be.
That's fascinating. And so you're just kind of trying to take the same type of business model, same idea, and just still like stay in the facilitation lane, but instead of working with nonprofits and retailers all the time, maybe doing, maybe like agriculture or like apparel brands and working maybe even with like for-profit upcyclers and recycling facilities and things like that.
Right. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. That's very cool. This is a really awesome novel idea. I don't have a lot of service-based, people coming on the podcast, but it's something I want to start doing more. So I appreciate you being a part of this. Yeah, it's really amazing. And I suppose one question I always love to ask everybody that comes on the podcast is, obviously you're having success here, thinking about your growth in a big way. If you go back to the beginning of this brand when you were pre-revenue, just like maybe at the day of your launch, and give yourself any piece of advice if you were to start this brand again, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
The piece of advice that I would give my earlier self, maybe 2 years ago when we just started the brand, is focusing on the pain points of the retailers and focusing on those pain points that we can immediately solve and immediately start adding value for. Because on a broad scope, me and my co-founder, we understand that donations is something that we want to facilitate, and there's waste being produced in like multiple different channels. But however, to get people to start working with us, like if we address their pain point and if we solve those pain points like very quickly and immediately instead of like trying to go after everything at once, we probably would have had a better head start, I would say. say. Not that we are in a bad position right now, but it's just something that it was just an insight that we have learned in the 2 years that we've existed as a company now.
Yeah, no, it's fair. I think that's good advice. Anybody maybe interested, looking to get 2 feet into a venture project in some kind of service industry. I think that's good advice overall across the board. So I appreciate you sharing that. I just want to give you an opportunity as well, Chai, real quick, just to shout out your website, any socials, any place to keep in touch with you guys if anybody's interested in maybe a potential business partnership or maybe just wants to learn more from you. What's the best way to stay in touch with you all?
The best way to stay in touch with us is by going to our website at liquidonate.com and using our donate an item flow. So even if you have something that's just lying in your apartment or your house that you don't need that guilt closet where you just keep throwing things away, like just maybe use our website and start donating from on our platform, and we'll make sure it goes to nonprofits. We're also active on LinkedIn, Instagram, and as far as anybody who wants to do a long-term partnership with us for donating on a regular basis, and anyone that has like pallets of CPG or pallets of apparel just lying around, we have like plenty of tools, and like we have a suite of products that we can offer them to start donating immediately. Like our pilot programs are very quick, and it's you can see the value that we add within a few days. So yeah, definitely reach out to me if we can make donations easier for any of you.
Awesome, Chai. Well, I really appreciate you being here. I wish you the best of luck, continued success in what you're doing, Chai. I absolutely love what you're doing. I think it's a much needed service. So thank you for facilitating this for people. It's obviously one of the biggest issues in the world we face today is with waste. So it's really amazing. I appreciate you sharing your story and your insights. And yeah, I wish you the best of luck and continued success. And I look forward to staying in touch.
Likewise, man. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chai. Thanks, everybody.